Warning: the following content contains references to suicide and may be disturbing to some viewers.
So welcome to the second in our Sex and Relationship series on Serge Benhayon TV. Obviously I'm talking to Serge Benhayon. In this episode we are going to delve into the state of masculinity, and in particular in what has been coined in academic circles toxic masculinity. And this has become a buzzword that incorporates an understanding of what is actually happening for men under the gendered definitions they are currently incarcerated by. So in toxic masculinity, we begin to understand that the kind of parameters that men are being asked to adhere to, whether that's the performance, being just the provider, being stoic, shutting down emotions, these kind of things are actually harming the man. And then we see this in terms of suicide rates. We see this in terms of men not accessing medical or psychological support when they need it because they have to be stoic. And so it's actually become a health consideration, the state of masculinity. It also, of course, is a factor, a huge factor in domestic violence rates, because an aggressive man is aggression and maleness have been partnered as if they are part of the one package. And so in this episode, we're actually going to unpack what is the antidote to this. How do we get underneath and break apart this model? And to talk about this, I'm talking to Serge Benhayon, and I love that he is going to bring in a term that is going to blow it out of the water in terms of the gendered stereotypes we're used to, and that is the concept of the energetic hermaphrodite, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. Hold on to your hats. Serge, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
The state of men today, the state of men's health today, this is an aberration, isn't it? Because this isn't the truth of the man.
I'm no saint. I'm not unclean of that. I used to be part of it, so I know exactly where it's at and its grip, and it's imprisoning. And it's one of those prisons, worst prisons, because you don't know you're in the cell, and you swear you're free and liberated and able to do whatever, unrestrained, so to speak, by the so-called freedoms that you get to express in that masculinity and that false sense of power that it gives you, when it's in fact not power at all. So it's just pure aggression and delinquency. Basically, it's just a form of abandoned delinquency. So when you resurrect yourself out of that, the process is not easy, because you have to be very, very honest about where you're at. And you have to question yourself as a man. And that questioning begins with, who are you without your distractions? But then before you get to the point of who are you without your distractions, you have to identify what are distractions. But here's the most difficult part. The distractions are our identifiers. They are what forms the masculine man. But they're actually distractions, and we're not even at the skin level of this topic, let alone the profoundness that we need to get to understand what we're talking about here. Because what I was defined by and made me feel that I am a complete man and could tick a lot of boxes are actually distractions away from the truth of who I really am. And if I kept going, well, I'm going to be a statistic of some sort, because the truth is, without those distractions, I'm not fulfilled.
Okay, so it's some practical examples. I am a surfer. I am a great builder. I am a this. I am a that. These are the kind of identifiers that become your reality of who you've constructed yourself as a man to be. But you're saying that if you strip that back, that there's an emptiness there, there's a lack of fulfillment.
Yes, but it's not just the function of being a surfer or a builder or a carpenter, etc., welder or engineer or an architect. It's not about that. It's how I am supposed to be within those industries, within those roles. So I can't just be a builder, I have to be a type of builder. I can't just surf because I like surfing. I have to be a particular type of surf head, so to speak. And that's the cell within the cell. So we're imprisoned by a role, but we have to be very much stereotypical within that to be able to be further identified.
And if you don't take on those different roles, what happens to you as a man? Because there are, you've spoken of in the past about deciding at a certain point that there was more advantage in you becoming the sports hero than you becoming the intelligent intellect and achiever at school, and you were strong in school, but you saw the glorification that the athlete gets in the school. So that was the road that you invested more of your identification in.
Yeah, it was incredible. I've written about it, of course, and I've shared it in my presentations. At the age of about 8 and a half, I saw very clearly that if you were one of the best spellers in the classroom or one of the best mathematicians, and I was very good at spelling, the whole class knew you were the best speller. And the whole classroom knows you're the best drawer, the best mathematician, etc., or the best music player. But the whole school knows you're the best athlete. If you're the footy player, if you're the soccer player, if you're the fastest runner, the whole school knows that. And I clearly saw it, and that's where I went. I made that decision because it was the safest gig in town. You're left alone once you go there. You're hated, and there's the element of jealousy, but it's almost like you're looked upon because you are that person. And it's horrible, but I've already shared the fact that that's what I chose very clearly. I was very aware of it at the age of 8.
Yes, and that became quite a success in your life, didn't it? So because it went on to be, a successful tennis coaching career of coaching, hundreds of kids per week and having big schools and stuff like that. So what is this part of what you have to deconstruct when you invest into the good of that as a man? If that is everything that you kind of rest your laurels on and that success, what's the process then is there a certain vulnerability that you feel when you start to realise that there has to be an unsheathing of that as your primary identification?
Well, that prison lasted, I would say the depth of that prison lasted until I was 22 when I fell in love at first sight with my wife, Rebecca Benhayon, my ex-wife, Rebecca Benhayon. And that was the releasing of that level of toxic masculinity. And then later in life, of course, at the age of 34, 35, I came into my own through the grace of my soul, and I was completely released from the inner cells or the inner prisons that is toxic masculinity. But let's face it, we're all going to be part of it if we don't address it at the level of society. How does an 8-year-old boy know to do that? Where does that realization come? Why is it so evident? At the age of 8, I should not have enough life experience to know that is the safest gig in town. And we need to know it at that level if we're going to address the toxic masculinity. But there's also women should also be discussing about the toxic femininity, as you've coined, Rebecca, because we need to know what's going on for women. Do they learn at some stage that submission is part of it? Do they learn at some point that they need to not compete with the guys, or that they need to compete with the guys and outdo it? There's a lot of factors that need to be discussed, and we need to get into this. We need to understand that society is not as robust and wholesome. It is functional, yes. It looks good. It has it has its distractions. It has its band-aids, very, very good band-aids. But at the core, it is struggling. And we have a huge deficit that we have to be responsible in terms of repairing.
Absolutely. It's like on the function level, it's you play your role, I'll play my role, and let's try to make them fit. And there's never a full fulfillment in that because the roles aren't us. So we're not actually coming together as who we truly are. So to talk about toxic femininity, there was a movie that was put out a few years ago, and it centered around a man who was porn addicted, and he showed all the obvious signs of not going to true intimacy with the woman and just seeking relief in sex and finding the porn more stimulating than the sex and stuff like that. So you could obviously say on the surface, okay, here's a man that's shut down to actually being transparent and connecting to the woman. But it had a very interesting subtext because the woman was also herself in behaviours that I would call toxic femininity. And she actually wanted that man to be the buck, to be the alpha, to not feel her vulnerability. And the turning point of the film is when the man starts to realise that he's incarcerated and he starts to get more vulnerable and say, actually, I want a deeper level of intimacy. And he takes that to the woman, and the woman out and out rejects it. She says, this isn't what I signed up for. I hate that you do porn, but I don't want you to ask me to be intimate. So she had her own form of toxic femininity going on in terms of she wanted everything to look the picture perfect of a relationship, but she didn't actually want to go there. It was a Stepford situation. He was the handbag boyfriend to go with the Gucci handbag, so to speak. And so there's a toxicness that is harder to pin in when we talk about what women do and how women manipulate emotionally, because we are both responsible for the fact that we're not being transparent with each other, aren't we?
Well, what you're touching here is on a huge subject, and we should dedicate a full interview, and perhaps we can bring some other people into this and share it. But the bottom line is we've got a nice term now, toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, but the truth is we've got all these prisons, and we use the word stereotyping, and it's not about becoming the prototypical person either. The fact is society is asking us to enter these cells and to keep ourselves in there, because if you dare come out, it will not be safe. And we all fall for it until such time that we're honest enough to say, do you know what, it's not really working. And if I don't have my forms of escape and distraction and entertainment, I can't get through. So what type of life is that when you need to escape it? If you need to escape life, then there's something wrong with life. So let's be honest about it. We need to be here in full in life with no need to escape. And then we discover this wonderful word called purpose.
Gorgeous. So we've deeply and clearly identified the prisons that both exist for men and for women, and how the crashing together of those prisons it's the cause of perennial angst, really. But you talked about deepening and connecting with your soul. What happens at that point? Do you get constrained by the toxic masculinity? Do you get affected by the toxic femininity? What changes in terms of your energetic quality at that point?
Well, first and foremost, you get liberated from all those caves that you've entered into for safety and for recognition and to be perennially recognized. Mm-hmm. And your soul is both male and female equally. And you're able to be that as a human being, which gives us that energetic hermaphrodite aspect and that livingness and that beauty of the energetic hermaphrodite. But what we've covered in this episode is all about energetic hermaphrodite, because it's telling us that with all these caves, we are driven deeper and deeper and deeper into one gender. and we are obliterating the possibility that we are equally the other gender, the opposite gender, within the one body. That doesn't mean that I need to go and have a sex change, with due respect to people who need that. It just means that energetically I can still be a full man, embrace my body as a man, as you can as a woman, but we can equally access everything available to what we've always assumed is only available to the opposite sex. And we can do that from an energetic point of view and be exclusively sensitive to that aspect, which gives us a level of wholesomeness we've never actually achieved before, because of the model of society that keeps telling us that you are the delineation that defines you, as in you're a man, you're a woman, when in fact we're robbing ourselves, as I've said before, of this amazing expansiveness that is far more universal, called the soul, and understood to be the magnificence of the universe. And that's where we need to go with this. We need to understand that we are not only entering the cave of man and woman, we're entering into many mini caves by submitting ourselves to the performances and the prototypical expectations that are placed on us for us to fulfill those roles. And each and every one of them is denigrating of who we truly are. And at the other end, we've got the statistics of suicide and lack of self-worth and rejection and psychosis and withdrawal, and that hunger for stimulation and entertainment and distraction. And so when life, the greatest indictment of life is the fact that we need entertainment. Life should be entertaining. And if we need entertainment, that's telling us something about life.
Beautiful. So there we have it, the energetic hermaphrodite, that absolute richness and balance that is actually all of our right. And with this, we throw out the gendered incarcerations that are seeing so many dysfunctions in life. You know, the fact that we see the male aspect rewarded, and we have to actually qualify that because we see aggression rewarded. So that's not actually true maleness, because true maleness, as we've discovered in this episode, is actually the balance of femaleness and maleness. It is the energetic hermaphrodite, as the female in her wholeness is in complete balance. And that's the beauty of one of my new favourite phrases, the energetic hermaphrodite. Thanks for joining us for this episode.